President Trump, I just saw your press conference with President Putin, and it was embarrassing. I mean, you stood there like a little wet noodle, like a little fanboy. I mean, I was asking myself, when are you going to ask him for an autograph or for a selfie or something like that? I mean, you literally sold out at this press conference our intelligence community, our justice system, and worst of all, our country. You're the President of the United States. You shouldn't do that. I mean, what's the matter with you? I mean, whatever happened to the strong words or to the strength of Ronald Reagan when he stood there at the Berlin Wall and he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. What happened to all that?
Just when you thought Arnold Schwarzenegger was done making waves, he storms back into the spotlight, this time with Donald Trump in his crosshairs. The action legend who once played an unstoppable machine just dropped a takedown so sharp, so direct that the entire political world is buzzing. Trump, a man who thrives on being the center of attention, just got hit with a verbal knockout punch. And the best part, Arnold didn't need a string of flashy insults or a long, dramatic speech. With just one perfectly chosen word, he managed to cut through all the noise and leave Trump fuming.
Do you think you'd be a good president, or would have been?
Yeah, I think that I have the talent to be a good president. And I also think that I have the talent to go out and to sell that idea to the American people. Those two candidates, Trump and Biden, suck all the energy, all the oxygen out of the room when they give a press speech or do anything. So no one else has the chance of getting the exposure. And there's really no one with a big name, so to speak. So that's why it would be easier for me, that from 1 minute to the next, that dynamic would change if I would jump into a race like that.
Now, why does this hit so hard? Because Schwarzenegger isn't just another Hollywood celebrity taking shots from the sidelines. He's a former governor, a lifelong Republican, and someone who actually understands what real leadership looks like. He's seen firsthand what happens when politicians let their egos run wild, and he's watched Trump turn the Republican Party into a full-blown circus. And now, he's had enough. Schwarzenegger is stepping up, calling Trump out, and making it clear this isn't about party loyalty anymore. It's about the future of the country.
President Trump sought to overturn the results of an election, and of a fair election. He sought a coup by misleading people with lies. My father and our neighbors were misled also with lies, and I know where such lies lead. President Trump is a failed leader. He will go down in history as the worst president ever. The good thing is that he soon will be as irrelevant as an old tweet. But what are we to make of those elected officials who have enabled his lies and his treachery? I will remind them of what Teddy Roosevelt said. Patriotism means to stand by the country. It does not mean to stand by the president.
This isn't just another Hollywood star mouthing off. It's a wake-up call. Schwarzenegger has seen what happens when democracy teeters on the edge, and he's making sure Americans don't forget just how dangerous January 6th really was. That wasn't just some bad day in history. It was a moment that could have led to something far worse. And Trump, instead of taking responsibility, he's done what he always does: deflect, downplay, and dodge. But Arnold's words aren't so easy to ignore, and the shockwaves from his speech are only beginning to spread.
I would make a great president. Everything that I've accomplished was because of America. So the only thing that I can't do, which is run for president, I'm not going to complain about that. We have had the most unbelievable reaction to the book. It's one of those things, that I did not dream of. All I wished was just to be the most muscular man in the world, to get into movies, and to make millions of dollars. After that, a lot of new dreams came about. People read about my successes. They read about the movies that made hundreds of millions of dollars, and they read that I won the governorship and ran the 5th largest economy in the world, how to become the greatest bodybuilder of all time. That's all true, but on the way to get there were tremendous defeats, and there were tremendous losses. Losers stay down, but winners always get up. Thank you. Ow, 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 ow. Wow.
Trump's social media outbursts are nothing surprising, but this one was on another level. It wasn't just his usual all-caps fury. It was the kind of public tantrum you'd expect from a kid who just got their favorite toy taken away. Only this time the playground was Twitter, and the toy was his fragile ego getting a reality check.
Mr. Trump has been indicted on federal charges, but most of the top Republican officials are siding with him against the special prosecutor. How do you explain that?
If the charges are correct, then he is going to be in deep trouble. But at the same time, I have to say that, we're always innocent until proven guilty. So we'll find out what the courts say in the future. But if the charges are right, I think that he's going to be in deep trouble.
And how worried are you about the fact that he could be reelected president?
I'm not worried about it, because I don't think it's going to happen. But that's just my thinking.
He launched into one of his signature rage-filled posts, going after Arnold Schwarzenegger like a sore loser throwing a fit after getting crushed in a game. Why? Because Arnold had the audacity to call him out. And if there's one thing Trump can't stand, it's being criticized, especially by someone bigger, stronger, and far more respected. The rant had all the usual Trump ingredients: whining about ratings, bragging about himself, and pointing fingers at everyone but himself. But here's the kicker: nobody cared.
I have a great idea. Why don't we switch jobs? You take over TV because you're such an expert in ratings, and I take over your job. And then people can finally sleep comfortably again.
And they hired a big movie star, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to take my place. And we know how that turned out. The ratings went right down the tubes. It's been a total disaster.
So being from Europe, I've seen firsthand how things can spin out of control. I know there is a fear in this country and all over the world that something like this could happen, right?
Trump's diehard supporters tried to spin his rant into a victory, but even they seemed exhausted. The rest of the internet, they treated it like background noise. Just another episode of Trump Loses It Online, a show that had lost its shock value. His usual tricks weren't landing the same way, and instead of looking strong, he looked desperate. Meanwhile, Arnold's words kept gaining momentum, and the contrast was undeniable. Schwarzenegger didn't need flashy insults or over-the-top theatrics. Just a simple, direct message delivered with the weight of experience was enough to shake things up. And Trump, he was scrambling, but the harder he tried to control the narrative, the more it slipped from his grasp. Arnold didn't just take a shot at Trump, he dismantled him piece by piece. He painted him as a failed leader, someone history would remember for all the wrong reasons. And here's what made it sting: it wasn't just opinion, it was backed by facts. He compared Trump's presidency to a sinking TV show, pointing out that even The Apprentice had better ratings without him. That wasn't just criticism, it was humiliation. And for someone like Trump, who thrives on being the center of attention, there was no bigger insult.
We have to go under completely. We don't have to wait for that moment. Let's change and let's go and be more open and go back to this kind of like a big tent idea of Ronald Reagan. And I think this is why we have helped it to some extent here in California with getting rid of gerrymandering and to do redistricting reform and to have open primaries.
Independents are about to overtake Republicans in California. What can California do differently?
I think independents are going to take over the Republicans, they're going to take over the Democrats.
Arnold didn't just take a swing at Trump, he shattered his entire persona with one brutal line. He said Trump would soon be as irrelevant as an old tweet, and in that moment, you could almost hear the internet explode. The man who built his entire image on social media, now reduced to nothing more than digital dust. This wasn't just a mic drop, it was a full-scale demolition. For years, Trump sold himself as larger than life, the ultimate power player. But in just a few sentences, Arnold did something no political debate, no scandal, and not even losing an election had managed to do. He made Trump look small. And if there's one thing Trump despises more than defeat, it's humiliation. You can bet he was fuming, probably pacing around Mar-a-Lago, rage-eating a Big Mac, while firing off another furious post. But here's the real kicker: no one cared. No matter how loudly he whined, the internet had already moved on. And even worse, they were laughing. Social media went into overdrive the moment Arnold's words hit the web. Memes flooded timelines faster than Trump's legal troubles. One viral post compared the showdown to Godzilla vs. King Kong, except in this version, one had bad hair, tiny hands, and zero self-awareness. Others mocked Trump's desperate attempts to terminate Arnold's speech, only to fail harder than his own business ventures. And of course, there were the jokes about Trump's obsession with ratings, because let's be real, his presidency played out like a reality show that should have been canceled after the first season.
While you were governor, what is something you said or did that you knew was a lie?
I don't know if I can say that.
There's a time when the governor signs bills or vetoes them. So when you veto a bill from the legislators, then you write a veto message. But there was one legislature that I didn't like at all. And so I vetoed his bill, but I wanted to make sure that he really gets the message. So I wrote each line on the veto message, each line had to start with a certain letter that when you go down the line, it says you. And at the press conference the next day, when they discovered that, the press, they said to me, says, did you know that they said you?
Yeah.
And I said, no, wait a minute. Where does it say that?
The best part? This wasn't some political analyst or news anchor picking apart Trump's legacy. This was Arnold Schwarzenegger, a Hollywood legend, a former governor, and a man who understands the difference between real leadership and a total circus. Trump spent years selling the idea that he was a winner, but after Arnold's takedown, the illusion was shattered. His ego might still be larger than life, but his relevance, that's sinking faster than a failed Trump casino. And social media? It didn't just react, it erupted. Arnold's speech spread across the internet at lightning speed, turning the online world into an all-you-can-eat meme buffet. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, every platform was flooded with brutal takedowns. One viral meme showed Arnold's face photoshopped onto the Statue of Liberty, holding a torch that read, "Common Sense," while Trump was reimagined as a glitching robot, overheating under the weight of his own nonsense. Another had Schwarzenegger in full Terminator mode, delivering his famous line, "Hasta la vista, Trump," while a tiny panicked Trump ran away, his hair practically flying off his head. And then there were the ratings jokes. Because nothing wounds Trump more than being called a flop, social media users dug up old clips of The Apprentice and compared them to Arnold's massive box office numbers. One tweet read, "Arnold dominated Hollywood for decades. Trump couldn't even keep a TV show without getting fired. If Trump thought he could spin this into a win, he was in for a rude awakening." The internet had spoken, and the verdict was clear. Arnold didn't just take him down, he terminated him.
Well, to me, it's all about hard work. That's why I say in my book, work your ass off. And because there's no shortcut. And you have to kind of put the work in. And I talked earlier about the bicep. The more you kind of torture the bicep, the more resistance you give it, and the more pain there is, the more it grows. The same is with us, with the human mind. The human mind can only really grow through resistance. You can only strengthen your character, become a really strong person inside if you have resistance. If you fail, if you get up again, and if you work hard, and if you work your ass off, and if you struggle, the more you struggle, the further you're gonna go.
The real shocker, even some of Trump's own supporters had to admit, this one hurt. Sure, the die-hard loyalists kept pretending it didn't matter, but the silence from others was deafening. When someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger, a man who built his career on strength, success, and sheer determination, calls Trump a failure, it sticks. And the best part? Trump couldn't do a thing about it. His old Twitter war tactics don't work anymore. His influence is fading. The man who once dominated the headlines now feels like yesterday's news. Meanwhile, Arnold just reminded the world that sometimes all it takes is one well-placed punch to knock a bully down for good. Trump loves to have the last word, but after Arnold's brutal takedown, even he might be at a loss. Will he fire back, or is he too busy sulking in Mar-a-Lago dreaming up another doomed comeback? Because let's be honest, his attempts to stay relevant are starting to feel like a sequel nobody asked for.
What would they say?
Ruin your cities.
What's that?
Ruin your cities.
Ruin your cities.
That's what the Democrats would say. We are about ruining the cities. We want to f up every city in America. That's what there seems to be the theme right now.
Why is that?
I have no idea.
The real question isn't whether Trump wants to run again, it's whether the Republican Party is finally ready to move on. For years, he's had a stranglehold on the GOP, shaping it into a party defined by blind loyalty and constant drama. But after his 2020 loss, the fallout from January 6th, and now this public humiliation at the hands of Arnold Schwarzenegger, cracks are beginning to show. Even some Republicans are starting to whisper what they wouldn't dare say before. Maybe it's time to let go. That's exactly what Schwarzenegger was getting at. His message wasn't just about Trump, it was about America's future. He's seen firsthand what happens when leaders let their egos dictate the course of a nation, and he's sounding the alarm. If people don't wake up, he warns, history could repeat itself. So what happens next? Does Trump try to claw his way back into the spotlight? Or is this the moment his political power finally fizzles out? One thing's for sure, if he does make a comeback, he's got a lot of damage control to do.
The bit of big news here today has been another high-profile Republican coming out in support of Kamala Harris. I speak of Arnold Schwarzenegger, former Republican governor of California, who in a strongly worded post on X today has essentially said, "Hasta la vista, Donald Trump." He says if Donald Trump is re-elected, he'll continue to divide Americans, he'll continue to insult Americans. And Arnold Schwarzenegger believes it is time to, in his words, turn the page on this chapter in US history.
Trump built his brand on being larger than life. The tough guy, the deal maker, the one who never loses. But after Arnold Schwarzenegger's brutal takedown, that image is looking shakier than ever. The man who spent years telling the world he's the best just got called out by someone who actually knows what winning looks like. And this time, the punch landed hard. Arnold didn't just throw insults, he hit Trump where it hurts the most, his ego. He didn't call him corrupt, dishonest, or even dangerous. He called him irrelevant. And that's Trump's worst nightmare, because once the headlines move on, once the memes die down, once people stop talking about him, what's left? A guy who went from the most powerful position in the world to just another ex-president, yelling into the void. Trump might still have a loyal fan base, but the world is changing. The Republican Party is shifting. More and more, it's becoming clear that his time at the top is over. The question isn't if he'll try to come back, it's whether anyone will still be listening. And if Arnold's words are any indication, the answer is simple. Hasta la vista, goodbye Trump.